Did you know that soldiers during World War II had to endure some of the most brutal and bizarre foods just to stay fueled on the front lines? Let's take a look at the top 20 wartime rations that would make even the bravest taste testers flinch. Stay tuned for a taste of history. Number 20. Logan Bars, Field Ration D. In the spring of 1937, Colonel Paul Logan, the Deputy Director of the Subsistence Division of the U.S. Army's Office of the Quartermaster General, approached the executives of the Hershey Chocolate Company with an unusual request. He needed a chocolate bar that not only served as a high-energy field ration, but could withstand tropical temperatures. The catch? It had to taste, in his own words, a little better than a boiled potato. The goal was to ensure soldiers viewed their bars as emergency rations rather than indulgent treats or trade commodities. A few months later, Hershey unveiled what would become known as Field Ration D, a 4-ounce, 600-calorie bar adorned with a small print warning urging soldiers to consume it slowly over about half an hour. Composed of chocolate, sugar, skim milk powder, cocoa fat, oat flour, and artificial flavoring. These specially formulated foil-wrapped Logan Bars went into mass production from 1940 to 1945, totaling a staggering 3 billion units. However, the reality for soldiers was far from delightful. The unpalatable nature of these rations led to countless complaints from GIs. The bars were not only hard enough to risk dental damage, but could also wreak havoc on the digestive system, earning them the nickname Hitler's secret weapon. Could you imagine surviving on a chocolate bar that could potentially break your teeth and cause intestinal distress? And that's just the beginning. So stick around as we count down the top 19 other brutal foods that soldiers had to endure during World War II. Number 19. Macaroni Stew. Let's talk about macaroni stew, a canned concoction that became a notorious part of British soldiers' rations during World War II. Now, this stew wasn't exactly something soldiers looked forward to. In fact, it earned itself a charming nickname, Dog Stew, due to its unappetizing flavor and texture. Picture this. The cans boldly proclaiming the contents to be the finest beef, potatoes, haricot beans, carrots, and onions. Sounds all right, doesn't it? Well, according to one account from the time, macaroni stew is described as a tinned ration consisting of sliced vegetables, chiefly turnips and carrots, in a deal of thin soup or gravy. Not the most appetizing description, huh? Now, the directions on the can had the audacity to suggest that the contents could be eaten hot or cold. Who in their right mind would willingly consume cold dog stew? But given the circumstances soldiers often found themselves in, heating up the can in boiling water for 30 minutes wasn't exactly practical, especially on the front line. When hot, macaroni stew ranged from barely palatable to somewhat decent, depending on who you ask. But when eaten cold, which unfortunately was all too common, it was an entirely different story. Apart from its vile taste, there was another unfortunate quality to macaroni stew. Some versions contained turnips, which when combined with the beans had a rather smelly side effect, if you catch my drift. Now, imagine being on a night march, surrounded by your fellow soldiers, and suddenly being engulfed in a frightful stench. That was the reality for soldiers like Calcutt, a private serving in the Middle East during World War II. According to accounts, macaroni stew rations gave troops flatulence of a particularly offensive nature. So, as they marched along, they were essentially walking on air, released by hundreds of men breaking wind. Lovely, right? But let's not be too quick to judge. Back then, there was little understanding of things like nutrition and foodborne illness. Personal hygiene practices were practically non-existent, especially in battalion kitchens operating under extreme conditions. This meant that the quality of the food suffered, and consequently, so did the health of the soldiers. Of the 16 million who lost their lives in the Great War, one can't help but wonder, how many died from poor food preparation and eating spoiled foods? It's not a knock on the battalion kitchens. These soldiers were facing impossible odds. Number 18. Bully beef. Now, let's talk about the infamous bully beef, a soldier's loyal companion during the tumultuous times of World War I. It may sound like a straightforward name, but the reality was far from appetizing. Bully beef, also known as corned beef, stood as a staple in soldiers' rations, offering a semblance of sustenance in the midst of chaos. Picture this: a tough, chewy texture accompanied by poor quality. That was the harsh reality of bully beef. Often, soldiers found themselves grappling with cans of the preserved meat, hoping to turn it into something remotely palatable. The name bully beef itself stems from the French bœuf boulé, translating to boiled beef, a hint at its humble beginnings. Officially labeled as preserved meat, this wartime delight was a form of canned food that had been a part of British military rations since the Anglo-Boer War. Most of it hailed from South America, with the Fray Bentos brand from Uruguay reigning supreme during both world wars. Imagine soldiers turning to cans of bully beef as a means of survival, a tradition that persisted until 2009. While you can find corned beef at your local grocery store today, wartime bully beef was a far cry from its contemporary counterpart. Soldiers consumed it not out of choice but necessity. Alongside hardtack, it was a reliable source of sustenance in times when options were scarce. Bully beef made its appearance in various sizes, including hefty 7-pound cans. Often soldiers had to endure it cold, a thick, greasy substance that left much to be desired. Lieutenant W.S. Dane humorously referred to it as a tramway accident for meat, capturing the less than appetizing nature of this wartime fare. There were even playful rumors circulating among soldiers suggesting it might be human meat. For many soldiers, it was a simple equation: eat bully beef or face starvation. Desperation led to creative measures. Crushed and soaked biscuits, mashed beef, and whatever vegetables could be scrounged up were combined to form a makeshift stew. Chopped onions or field greens added a touch of flavor, transforming an unappetizing mix into patties resembling large burgers. Soldiers then fried these creations in fat salvaged from the beef, turning a dire situation into a somewhat bearable meal. Number 17. Hardtack Biscuits. Now, let's delve into the world of hardtack biscuits, a culinary companion with a history as tough as its texture. Picture soldiers in the American Civil War and British troops alike, hoping to turn these tasteless flour and water discs into something remotely edible. Their method? Smashing them with large stones or rifle butts, then subjecting the broken bits to a lengthy soak in water or coffee. However, the Brits, it seems, were spared the grim fate suffered by their U.S. counterparts, who routinely found their hardtack infested with maggots, earning them the endearing nickname Worm Castles. Hardtack, despite its name, isn't a tool from a hardware store, but a biscuit that has been a stalwart companion for sailors and soldiers throughout the ages. Crafted from 3 simple ingredients: water, flour, and salt. This biscuit is baked, left to dry, and hardened into a rock-like consistency, ensuring durability and longevity. Soldiers, ever creative with language, coined numerous nicknames for hardtack: teeth dullers, molar breakers, sheet iron, and dog biscuits, to name a few. Canadian soldiers in particular carried hardtack into battle during the South African War and both World Wars, relying on these sturdy biscuits when fresh rations were scarce. Often accompanied by canned bully corned beef, soldiers bemoaned its fat and gristle content. The biscuits were notorious for their hardness, necessitating soldiers to employ various tactics to make them edible. Soaking in water or tea was a common practice, turning the rock-hard biscuit into a somewhat palatable meal. Some soldiers took it a step further, frying the soaked hardtack in fat or crushing it with rifle butts, incorporating it into stews. Soldiers humorously asserted that hardtack wasn't designed for consumption. Instead, it excelled as a multi-purpose tool. It served as improvised hammers, roof or floor tiles, fuel for fires, and even makeshift armor against bullets and shrapnel. Some soldiers showcased their creativity by turning hardtack into Christmas cards, letters, photo frames, and various souvenirs. Others, in an act of both resourcefulness and homesickness, sent hardtack back home, allowing loved ones a taste of the front lines. Number 16. Cream chipped beef on toast. SOS. Now, let's dive into the intriguing world of cream chipped beef on toast, affectionately known as shit on a shingle, or simply SOS. This peculiar dish has a remarkable history that stretches from the trenches of World War I to the jungles of Vietnam. In the Annals of Culinary Lore, the Manual for Army Cooks, published in 1910, stands out. This time, under the U.S. Army's Commissary General, held a treasure trove of recipes ranging from beef brains and eggs to pigeon and robin pot pies. Yet, one recipe gained an iconic status that endured through the decades: the cream chipped beef on toast, aka SOS. This dish, with its hearty blend of chipped beef, butter, and evaporated milk, became a mess hall staple from World War I straight through to Vietnam, and even found a saltier and creamier rendition in U.S. Navy cookbooks during World War II. Soldiers, renowned for their wit, promptly dubbed it shit on a shingle, or simply SOS. Despite complaints about its taste and, let's say, interesting texture, many found solace in the warmth and creaminess of the dish, a result of copious amounts of butter and evaporated milk. Some cheeky nicknames like creamed foreskins on toast or CFSOT emerged, adding a dash of humor to the mess hall banter. The unofficial term SOS, a quirky slang among soldiers, made its mark during World War II. It specifically referred to creamed chipped beef on toast, but any variation of cream meat, the shit, served on toast, the shingle, fell under this moniker. The dish garnered an array of unappetizing titles, including the comical shit on a wrap. Despite the less than appetizing names, cream chipped beef managed to carve out a place in soldiers' hearts. Interestingly, beyond the battlegrounds, this wartime creation found its way into the hearts of mid-Atlantic U.S. residents, particularly in Pennsylvania, where it became a beloved diner breakfast item. At one point, major restaurant chains like IHOP and Cracker Barrel even featured cream chipped beef on their menus nationally. While SOS originated in the mess halls in the 1940s, its uncouth name and popularity persisted. Pennsylvania Dutch recipes rebranded it as Dutch frizzled beef, but in diners across the region, it's still affectionately known as shit on a shingle. Number 15. Sea Rations. Sea Rats. Now, let's open the can on sea rations. The military's culinary evolution that started as a replacement for World War I reserve rations and underwent transformations until the era of the meal ready to eat. In 1938, the military culinary landscape underwent a significant change with the development of sea rations, aimed at replacing the somewhat mundane reserve rations from World War I. Picture this: canned corned beef or bacon, hardtack biscuits, coffee, sugar, salt, and tobacco with rolling paper. Hardly a feast of variety for the troops. The culinary scientists at the Quartermaster's Subsistence Research and Development Laboratory in Chicago took up the challenge. Their mission? Create meals that could endure the test of time, be nutritious, and most importantly, not taste like cardboard. The solution they crafted came in the form of 12-ounce tin plate cans, requiring a quaint key to pop them open. Initially, the menu featured stews, but as the war progressed, the options expanded to include meat and spaghetti and tomato sauce, chopped ham, eggs and potatoes, meat and noodles, pork and beans, ham and lima beans, and chicken and vegetables. As a bonus, Troops found chocolate, candy, gum, biscuits, and cigarettes alongside their main courses. Consuming 3 square C-ration meals a day provided soldiers with a hefty 3,700 calories, essential for the physical demands of combat. While the option to eat them cold was available, many agreed that warming them up significantly enhanced the flavor. Troop feedback, although often ignored, did make its way to the military brass. The ham and lima beans combo, despite its unpopularity, clung to the C-ration menu until well into the Vietnam War. 2 consistent gripes were the monotony of food selection and the weight of carrying these meals on foot into combat. In 1958, C-rations underwent a facelift, replaced by the Meal Combat Individual Rations. Surprisingly, the contents remained almost identical, prompting soldiers to continue referring to them as C-rats until the early 1980s. The game changer came with the advent of Meal Ready to Eat, or MREs, ushering in a new era. Packaged meals replaced the trusty cans, significantly lightening the load for soldiers in the field. Number 14. K-rations. Now let's dig into the wartime innovation known as K-rations, a combat survival package designed to keep troops fueled and ready for action. Developed by psychologist Ansel Keys from the University of Minnesota in 1941, K-rations were the brainchild of the U.S. War Department's quest for a lightweight, nutrition-packed solution that could withstand the rigors of combat. The goal was clear: keep troops healthy and adequately fed, even in the most challenging environments. To ensure durability, the boxes were coated in wax, making them completely waterproof when sealed. These rations were not intended to be gourmet meals, but rather life-saving provisions in dire circumstances. If soldiers found themselves stranded behind enemy lines, K-rations were their lifeline, albeit a modest and potentially unsatisfying one. Yet, stories abound of troops subsisting solely on K-rations for weeks at a time, a testament to their effectiveness in sustaining life during wartime. Produced by major U.S. food manufacturers like H.J. Heinz and Cracker Jack Company, K-rations came in 3 boxes per day, each containing the essential meals: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. To make identification easier, the boxes were color-coded: brown for breakfast, green for lunch, and blue for dinner. These rations provided approximately 2,830 kilocalories per day, with each meal box containing around 4 ounces of meat and egg product, or cheese spread, accompanying by biscuits, confections, gum, and beverages with sugar. Troop uniforms were even redesigned to accommodate key ration boxes snugly inside their pockets, ensuring that soldiers had their sustenance within arm's reach at all times. But K-rations were more than just food. They were survival kits in miniature, complete with practical field items like wood cutlery, toilet paper, and cigarettes. The versatility of K-ration boxes extended beyond their nutritional contents. Once emptied, they served as handy storage containers for personal items like letters, matches, and photos. Their waterproof construction made them ideal for safeguarding valuables in the field. Plus, K-ration boxes often came adorned with useful tips, such as advice on preventing malaria by rolling down sleeves and using mosquito repellent. Small but crucial details that could save lives on the battlefield. Inside each unit, the contents varied, depending on the meal. Breakfast boxes might include powdered coffee, fruit bars, and canned meat, while lunch or dinner offerings could feature bouillon powder, candy, canned meat, and biscuits. Supper boxes typically contain biscuits, canned cheese, gum, and candy bars, a modest but vital assortment to keep soldiers fueled and focused during combat operations. Number 13. Stinging Nettle Soup. In the midst of the harsh realities of war, soldiers often turn to unconventional sources for sustenance, and during World War II, Soviet soldiers found solace and nutrition in a surprising place: stinging nettles. Nettles, often dismissed as pesky weeds, became a staple in the daily rations for many Soviet soldiers, featuring prominently in both breakfast and dinner. The versatility of nettles, once boiled or steamed, allowed them to serve as a green vegetable with a taste akin to spinach. Despite the chaotic battles of Normandy, soldiers sought simplicity in their meals, a break from the monotony of their rations, coupled with an added boost of energy to keep them going. A Russian proverb captures the essence of using nettles in cuisine.
Сгача крапива родится, да в шаю варится.
Translated as, nettles are born stinging, but boiled down in cabbage soup. The stinging hairs that initially make nettles a nuisance can be neutralized by soaking them briefly, revealing a plant rich in vitamin A, C, K, and B, along with iron, calcium, chlorophyll, and carotenoids. Beyond just wartime necessity, nettles were valued for their nutritious health benefits, aiding in fighting infections, improving digestion, and enhancing bone strength, hair, and skin condition. For soldiers in the thick of World War II, simplicity was key. Making elaborate meals was a luxury they couldn't afford. Instead, they would collect nettles, chop or pound them into a pulp, and boil them in a mess tin or steel helmet. The resulting nettle soup provided not only a welcome deviation from standard rations, but also a nutritional boost that was readily available in the countryside. Even after the war, nettle soup continued to be a common dish for veterans and rural residents, a testament to its enduring popularity and practicality. Today, Russian housewives often add their unique combination of vegetables and spices to enhance the flavor of nettle soup, making it a typical part of country cuisine. Number 12. Nutella in military rations. In the realm of military rations, where practicality and sustenance often take precedence, the inclusion of Nutella might seem like an unexpected addition. Yet, in Denmark, this chocolate hazelnut spread found its way into military rations through a rather unconventional route, involving a comedian-turned-politician and a campaign promise that defied expectations. The story traces back to the 1990s when Jacob Haggard, a comedian with a penchant for eccentricities, unexpectedly found himself elected to office in Denmark after 15 years of unsuccessful political campaigns. Representing the independent union of consciously work-shy elements, Haggard's candidacy was marked by humor and satire rather than serious political ambitions. One of Haggard's outlandish campaign promises caught the public's attention: the inclusion of Nutella in Danish military rations. While such a privilege may have seemed trivial or even absurd in the context of political discourse, Haggard remained steadfast in his commitment even after securing an unexpected victory. True to his word, Haggard ensured that Nutella found its way into Danish military rations, turning what began as a comedic campaign promise into a tangible reality. Despite the unconventional origins of this decision, the addition of Nutella to rations reflects the acknowledgement of soldiers' need for a portable and morale-boosting sweet treat, aligning with the tradition of including items like peanut butter and jam in military provisions. Number 11. Asparagus. Vegetables of military rations are often met with mixed reviews, and canned asparagus, in particular, doesn't usually top the list of culinary delights. Fresh asparagus, even for civilians, can be an acquired taste. However, when it comes to wartime provisions, the inclusion of seemingly unconventional items always has a story behind it. In the case of asparagus in British rations, especially for pilots flying over the South Pacific during World War II, the reasoning behind its inclusion takes an unexpected turn. While the nutritional value of vegetables is undoubtedly crucial, the purported reason for including asparagus in these rations goes beyond just providing essential vitamins. Legend has it that the British military included asparagus for a rather particular and strategic purpose related to survival tactics. Asparagus contains compounds with formidable names like S-methylthioacrylate and S-methylthiobiopropionate. which are responsible for the distinct odor that occurs in urine after consuming asparagus. Now, you might wonder, what does urine odor have to do with wartime necessities? The intriguing theory suggests that if a pilot were shot down over the ocean but managed to survive, the inclusion of asparagus in their rations could serve a potentially life-saving purpose. Fish are known to be attracted to sulfur compounds, and the unique chemicals in asparagus-laden urine could act as a fish magnet. In this scenario, a stranded pilot could urinate into the ocean or a river, and the compound from the asparagus would attract fish, making them easier to catch for sustenance. While tracking down concrete evidence of asparagus being included in pilot rations is challenging, and the story seems to be as elusive as a wartime submarine, the science behind it holds up, at least on paper. References to this unusual strategy can be found in print dating back to at least 1957, adding a fishy tale to the wartime culinary repertoire. Number 10. Desiccated Vegetables. In the battlefield, fresh food is a luxury that soldiers seldom have the privilege of enjoying. Preservation becomes paramount, and while crackers and meats can endure the rigors of wartime logistics, fruits and vegetables face a different fate. Desperate times called for desperate measures, leading to the introduction of desiccated vegetables during the Civil War, an innovation that soldiers quickly and humorously renamed as desecrated vegetables. String beans, turnips, onions, carrots, and beets, once bursting with life, were transformed into compressed, dried bricks, each measuring 1 inch thick and 1 foot long. The intention behind this preservation method was clear: to create a portable and long-lasting source of essential vitamins and nutrients. However, the unfortunate side effect was a taste so repulsive that many soldiers shunned these desiccated vegetables unless absolutely necessary. Sergeant Cyrus Boyd of the 15th Iowa vividly captured the sentiments of his comrades, expressing that desiccated vegetables made him the sickest of my life. The unpalatable nature of these compressed rations left soldiers with a tough choice: consume them to stave off scurvy and chronic diarrhea, both of which were rampant during wartime, or risk their health by avoiding these culinary bricks. The prevalence of diarrhea in the Union Army during the Civil War tells a tale of its own. With a staggering 1.6 million cases and nearly 11,000 soldiers succumbing to its effects, the grim reality was clear. Desiccated vegetables, despite their less than appetizing reputation, played a crucial role in preventing nutritional deficiencies that could prove fatal. Number 9. Spam. In 1937, just as the world was hurtling towards the cataclysm of World War II, Hormel introduced Spam to the culinary stage. Little did they know that this canned meat product would soon become a crucial player in the U.S. military's rations during the war, leaving an indelible mark on wartime diets. As the conflict unfolded, Spam's prominence reached its zenith in the Pacific Theater. Places like Guam, the Philippines, and Japan, where U.S. troops were stationed, saw Spam enter the diets of locals, becoming a symbol of sustenance in the aftermath of war. The ravages of conflict had obliterated domestic food production in many regions, making Spam a vital survival tool and, at times, a force-fed necessity, such as in the case of Japanese Americans interned in camps during World War II. Yet Spam's narrative in the Asia-Pacific region is nuanced and intricate, emblematic of both American colonialism and the adaptability of local cuisine. Despite its introduction during a period of hardship and violence, Spam became a versatile ingredient, seamlessly blending into diverse culinary traditions across Asia and the Pacific Islands. From Korea's budae jjigae to Hawaii's Spam musubi, Singapore's Spam curry to the Philippines' Spam sisig, and Hong Kong's Spam macaroni soup, Spam evolved into the ultimate shape-shifter, effortlessly integrating with flavors from around the globe. Number 8. Raw Siberian Jbird. In the annals of wartime culinary experiences, one soldier's extraordinary journey stands out as perhaps the oddest and most surreal of them all. Meet Eimo Koivunen, a Finnish soldier who during World War II embarked on a ski patrol that would lead him to consume an unconventional source of sustenance, a raw Siberian Jbird. As part of the Finnish army fighting alongside the Nazis, Koivunen's ski patrol faced a Soviet attack. Each soldier carried a different supply, and fate had it that Koivunen bore the patrol stash of Pervitin pills. These pills, containing methamphetamine, were issued to soldiers to enhance wakefulness and strength. In a harrowing turn of events, as the Soviets closed on Koivunen, in a desperate bid for survival, emptied the entire bottle, 30 pills, into his mouth. What ensued was a surreal odyssey of survival. Over the next 2 weeks, covering an astonishing 250 miles, Koivunen's journey became a roller coaster of bizarre incidences. In the throes of his methamphetamine-induced state, he stumbled onto an abandoned cabin, attempted to stay warm by starting a fire, inadvertently fell asleep and woke to find the cabin engulfed in flames. Undeterred, Koivunen pressed on and, in a twist of fate, encountered an abandoned Nazi camp where he unwittingly stepped on a landmine, nearly tearing his leg apart. In the unforgiving snowy wilderness, his diet consists of pine nuts and, most remarkably, a raw Siberian Jbird that he caught and consumed. By the time he reached help, Koivunen was a mere shadow of his former self, weighing only 96 pounds, with a resting heart rate soaring to an alarming 200 beats per minute. Yet, against all odds, medical professionals managed to stitch him up. Koivunen not only survived this surreal ordeal, but went on to live until the age of 71, leaving behind a tale that transcends the boundaries of war and ventures into the realm of the unimaginable. Number 7. Rye bread and potatoes were the main staple of the Wehrmacht. The German military, known for its meticulous planning, implemented a precise breakdown of rations tailored in different groups of soldiers within the Wehrmacht. Troops were categorized into 4 groups: those actively engaged in combat, occupation troops, garrison troops within Germany, and office workers and nurses within the homeland. The mainstays of every German's rations were hearty servings of rye bread, potatoes, and fresh fruits and vegetables. However, the location varied based on the specific role and location of the soldier. Combat troops facing the rigors of the front line received a substantial 700 grams of rye bread, while office workers within Germany received a slightly lesser 600 grams. One notable discrepancy lay in the allocation of meat, a prized commodity in wartime. Combat soldiers were entitled to 136 grams of meat, while occupation troops received 107 grams, garrison troops received 90 grams, and office workers and nurses received a modest 56 grams. This stark contrast reflected the recognition of the increased physical demands placed on soldiers engaged in active combat. Beyond meat, the differences extended to other provisions. Combat soldiers enjoyed more generous portions of fats and bread spreads, sugar, and were even allocated 7 cigarettes, suggesting that diverse rations would have a psychological impact on morale. Number 6. Brevy Bread. Soviet soldiers facing the challenges of war on the Eastern Front encountered a unique item on their menu, Brevy Bread. Despite the name suggesting a traditional bread, this wartime creation was anything but conventional, being crafted entirely from potatoes and bran. The process involved boiling potatoes, removing the skins, and grinding them into a mash. After cooling, the potato mash was combined with bran and salt, kneaded into a dough, and baked in tins. While this method might seem labor-intensive, it served a crucial purpose beyond sustenance. In the harsh reality of war, the monotony of repetitiveness, bland meals could take a toll on soldiers' morale. The innovation of Brevy bread offered a departure from the ordinary, introducing variety into their diet. Recognizing the psychological impact of food on soldiers' mental states, military chefs went the extra mile to provide a semblance of diversity, even in the form of a potato-based bread. Number 5. Dog Biscuits. During World War I and beyond, Americans and other Western forces also consumed hardtack crackers, which some called pet biscuits, essentially just flour. The crackers had an incredibly long shelf life, but were known to be almost rock hard. They had first seen use in American rations all the way back in the Civil War. To make them edible, soldiers would soak them in water or milk. They could also be ground up and cooked with bully beef or dried vegetables to thicken a stew. It was arguably possible to make them tasty if a clever cook with some reasonable supplies was around. Without softening, the crackers could be a health hazard. Soldiers with bad teeth simply could not chew them. A soldier named Private Pressey wrote home about how he had tried to break one against a wall and ended up hurting his hand. In spite of the bland taste and iron-like properties of the biscuits, the flour provided much-needed carbohydrates in a portable, lightweight package. A strong argument could be made that soldiers simply would not have survived at all without the calories provided, even if they were unpleasant and hard to ingest. Number 4. The 14-man ration. It was not uncommon for British troops on the front line to be sent there before mobile kitchens had been established. In these cases, the soldiers would be given the 14-man ration, a wooden crate with enough food to feed 14 men for a 24-hour period. There were differences in the contents of the 14-man ration to provide the soldiers with a variety of food. However, there were often staples in the box. Tins of preserved meat like Spam or bully beef, kidney pudding, beans, biscuits, jam, cheese, soup, oatmeal, sausage, and chocolate to help boost morale a bit. However, every box always contained one British necessity, tea, along with powdered milk to add to the cup. Known also as the landing ration or assault ration, the 24-hour ration was available 24 hours a day. It consisted of a cardboard box that could fit inside a larger half of a mess tin. The box was treated with wax to make it resistant to both weather and gas attack. The contents were intended to provide enough calories for a day in a compact package, including what was called a meat block, a compressed piece of dehydrated meat. Unlike modern jerky, the meat block was intended to be broken up into hot water before consuming. A similar item was the Oatmeal Block, which was also supposed to be broken up and boiled in water. It was very dense, and eating it on its own tended to cause stomach upset. Packets of dehydrated tea, including sugar and powdered milk, were included. The 24-hour ration also came with a small packet of biscuits, chocolate, boiled sweets, salt, and a few sheets of latrine paper. 2 of the 24-hour ration packs were typically issued at the beginning of an operation, along with a small, folding solid fuel stove known universally as a Tommy cooker. After the first 48 hours of the operation, it was hoped that standard ration supplies would be possible based on the composite ration. Number 3. Wassersuppe. It was common for the German army to eat soup on a regular basis. The main meal of the day, which for the Germans was lunch, would usually be a tin full of stew or thick soup. In good times, the soup contained a good amount of meat and was dense enough to stand a spoon up in. But by the Normandy campaign, food shortages had made it a much thinner fare. Throughout World War II, German cooks scavenged relentlessly for food to feed soldiers. Late in the war, the basic meal was soup made from boiled bones, often from a dead cart horse. Bone broth is nutritious, but it's not exactly filling, so cooks and soldiers bulked it out with anything they could find. Greens, including nettles, wheat or barley, even crushed stale bread would be added to the soup to make a more satisfying meal. Number 2. Powdered eggs. During World War II, it was difficult to keep chickens, so soldiers were allowed only 1 egg per week as part of their ration. Vegetarians received more eggs, but they got no meat allowance. People were encouraged to raise their own chickens. If they did, their egg rations were replaced by chicken feed, and they could have their chickens' eggs free of ration restrictions. Of course, not everyone had space or time to start a small chicken farm. For those individuals, the powdered egg was brought in from America. This was just a dehydrated egg, which was much easier and cheaper to transport. The downside? The public hated it. An energetic government campaign tried to convince people that dried egg powder was really just as good as a normal egg after water was added, but people couldn't get used to the strange texture. This powdered egg was put to use in cakes, custards, and omelets, but for years the traditional fried egg on toast snack was nothing but a dream for many Brits. Number 1. Horse meat soup. It was a luxury to be able to eat a hot meal during the war. Soup was typically the easiest and the best choice for this. It was a good way to rehydrate dried vegetables and make canned meat somewhat palatable. There were also times when soldiers actually had access to cooks who could more or less cook food. The end result was sometimes suspect. In 1916, supplies were almost impossible to come by. Soldiers had to rely on what they could find around the trenches in France, and that meant adapting to local ingredients. With no access to flour, dried and ground turnips were used to make bread. Peas were plentiful, so pea soup became one of the staples of a soldier's diet. But they didn't exactly have ham. In order to boost the soup's protein and fat content, horse meat would occasionally be added. Likely not the first choice of any soldier in the field, it was probably better than rat, which was rumored to have made its way into more than one stew. Dried peas and chunks of horse meat must have been a serious low point for the soldiers after a day of battling opposing forces. While riding myself, I considered the source of the horse meat and thought about horses from enemy factions. That's all, friends. If you found this video fascinating, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more fascinating insights into history. Until next time, stay tuned.